bad?
Do over.
We're doing good so far.
Okay. Shh. Shh. Okay.
Chance to hide the days. Clouds are covering the northern lights, and all the fireworks are in the sky. And who said you thought you didn't want to do this anymore? And who said you thought you'd never want to be at home again? Falling from the open sky, they hurt like hell. We always talked about how beautiful the sunlight was when we were young, and now we're old. Now we're so old, and we're all so ready. We're ready to
I like Stella. I feel like it's a pretty dynamic song.
For all minute and a half of it.
Exactly.
Translate, I think of the freaking huge heavy moment. It's one of my favorite parts of the album. Whenever I hear Transit, like, I ignore the guitar solos at the end, I ignore the guitar solos at the beginning. And I just think of the heavy guitars in the middle.
I don't know. If it just went into the heavy part, it wouldn't be much of a song.
Exactly.
So I think you need that whole build.
That's what makes the heavy part erase the other two parts, is the other two parts.
Right.
The middle's a fun part to play.
So.
I think it's
It's like
It's an unexpected
fresh air while suffocating.
Right. You're not necessarily expecting it, so it surprises you, but then all of a sudden it's refreshing.
It's like you're being tortured and they give you a breath of fresh air, but you're not actually expecting it to be fresh.
Right.
So like you're still actually being tortured and
It's like somebody making you breathe.
you like die before the song's over because you didn't actually take advantage.
It was poison gas.
It was poison gas.
And you regret it
Northern
later.
Lights.
Northern Lights.
Northern Lights. I freaking love Northern Lights because if someone listens to like the first two songs on the album, and I'm watching them for the first time, this is the first time they listen to it, and you know they haven't really said anything bad or good about the album. When this song comes on, they're like, "Yeah, brother," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's a good song, huh?" They're like, "Yeah, I'll be at your next show." I'm like, "All right, sweet."
Northern Lights is like our radio single.
They maybe hadn't said anything until the end of this song.
Sure.
You know, and it's not that they didn't like the first part, it's just that like this is the part where they're like, oh, these guys really got like the whole friggin' spectrum.
Apparently, seriously, just makes me think of trippy metal. Trippy and then metal.
I don't want to say it's our weakest link live, but I don't think we do it complete justice.
Well, we can't transport a choir.
Right. No, yeah, exactly. I think it's like one of those, I don't know, it's probably my favorite, I don't know how to put this. It's the most like studio-based song on the record, I think, like, because we used so many digital things and it's hard to like recreate that live. But at the same time, it has a curious thing where it still sounds almost as organic as every other song on the record. And I think it's probably my favorite one to sing live. I don't know. But like Austin, I don't have a favorite.
Well, that's how I feel
song.
about it too. I wouldn't necessarily agree it would be my favorite if I was an audience member, and I don't think we probably sound the best on that song, but it's one of my favorites to play
Right.
live, just because in my head I'm hearing the album too as I'm going through it. So
That helps a lot.
yeah, so maybe to an audience member that knows the song real well, they probably feel the same way.
It was a fun one to write for too,
Yeah.
because it was such like. I remember when we first started working on it, all we had was like huge 15 seconds of like organ swell that was like, that never changed, and we're like, what the hell are we gonna do with this? But I think in the end it completely turned out to be something beyond what all of us had imagined. And we were tossing around so many ideas that it was like nobody knew what we were trying to imagine. I think that was probably the like most chaotic song to assemble, in my opinion. Like Analemma is probably like the longest and most complex, but
Metal, I don't care if you're talking trippy, I don't care if you're talking trippy metal.
we all, I mean, like, Bo had a pretty solid idea of how the end would kind of play out, and everybody kind of had this feeling of what it needed to get to, whereas Paramnesia, like, nobody had any idea where it was going to get to.
I remember being in a position where we didn't really know where it was going, and then Bo wrote that choir interlude. And
Yeah.
Bo and I listened to it, and we just like knew that it was gonna be, I don't know.
And that was the
It was
only
kind of a
thing.
180.
That's all we even really knew the song was gonna be, was that we wanted to collaborate with Ben, but we thought of him as like the electronica dude, but it really ended up being organ, which is electronic in the sense that we recorded it as a synth, but it didn't really use him to his full potential, like his crazy solo work. But going into it, we basically knew that, and Dustin had voiced that he wanted a choir part. That's literally.
Which was shot down.
Yeah.
quite early.
I don't think that's true. I was in favor of it all along.
Well,
That's why I ended up writing it.
It was one of those things where when you throw it out, it's like, yeah, it sounds nice in theory, but how practical is it?
Yeah.
And then I think when it was finally tossed in there, like,
It was always there though.
We
We all
kinda
thought
figured
it
it
was
out.
nice.
Yeah.
We just had to pull it
No
out.
one just knew where to. No one knew where to go with it.
So
Right.
basically, it's just like the idea of collaborating with Ben isn't even really a structural or melodic concept, but the choir is like a concept of timbre, but it's not like the song. Just really, we had no goals in mind. It was just collaboration and let's use a choir at some point, and that's what came out.
Oh, your words pulse beneath my chest and steal the breath I've known, but I can't tell you why or even where it all had gone when it was lost among the leaves. Oh, I feel all the bright wings coming home, and I'll feel alone enough to know softly to lift your head, and finding here to bring in close a silent love that no one knows. Well, if you knew the sights my eyes have set upon, perhaps you could fancy me and dance with my epiphany. You could take the reins, my heart, my soul, and all the lies, 'cause you know it'll never be like one foot behind the tide against my pride. We reach for the sky. You are floating towards your absence. Outside the lines where expression lies and lies, I'm screaming for the place where I feel warm enough to hide. Come build a path with me somewhere past eternity, where everything stands still and it is just the two of us. What can we find when we have traveled past our means? Silence and photographs of friends by twos and threes, held in by promises of callous spoken law. Could we imagine life bereft of all its flaws? One escape so far delayed, just beyond the rise, as we pray for divine. You are floating towards your absence. Outside the lines where expression lies and lies, I'm screaming for the place where I feel warm enough to hide. Come build a path with me somewhere past eternity, where everything stands still and it is just the two of us.
Speaking of the album, Silent Lake.
Good.
It's really nostalgic because of the fall scenery and lots of trees and hills on the campus and a new place.
Is that the last song written?
It was interesting because it's kind of the first song that I've ever composed on my own without, conforming to other people's progressions and riffs and things, and so it's kind of a chance to expand into my own little realm other than a song someone else had composed. So
As far as strictly instrumental parts go, that's my favorite. I think probably for a lot of the same reason Bo likes it, that it's just all feeling.
Can you bring up how funny it was to write it? Like what we just told Jen.
About what?
Just like how we said, all right, hey, your piano part during the chorus of Northern Lights is really pretty.
Oh yeah.
And we need a transition. Why don't you just use that riff? And then she wrote 3 or 4 minutes of song around it.
A lot of that stuff was like that, or a lot of the things on this album are like that though. I think one of the things we kind of set out to do, we didn't first have the idea of doing like a concept record. It was like, you know, we worked on Northern Lights first, and then I think we had Trade Winds like second.
Stella.
We had Stella short. I think actually Stella and Northern Lights were the first ones we worked on, and then Bo brought Trade Winds into the mix. And at that point, it didn't seem like those 3 songs alone would not even make sense on a concept record. I don't think. I don't think it's a traditional concept record in that sense. I think it's just like more story based and more. I don't even know what the word for it is, but there was a lot of those moments when parts of Jen's were so good, or we liked them so much that we're like, hey, we should recycle this kind of and like put a twist on it and put this later on. So you kind of like reminisce back to this moment, you know, 7 minutes ago. And Bo probably knows more of these parts than I do, but there's 3, 4, 5, 6
There's
parts,
your
something like that.
guitar riff during some.
Yeah, you come back to that
three
twice.
songs, and then Northern Lights carries into Silent Lake. And really, other than that, I think they're mostly key things, like how Analemma, when we decided to write it, it was just going to be an outro for Ultima Rea, and so it was just like obviously going to be in the same key.
Right.
And the first 3 are in the same key. I think it's more of those things, and then, yeah, like you said, it's a concept album on more of a literary basis than a musical basis.
Jen, can you say anything else about Trade Winds?
Guitar solo.
Amen.
That's true.
Trade Winds is probably one of the most simple drum parts.
Even though it's the simplest and probably most underwhelming song we have in terms of just like surprises and stuff like that, it has a lot of feeling. I don't know. I like the vocals. They're emotional. And I don't know if you can say anything else about Trade Winds. I like it.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole end of that song is like really, I don't know. That's probably one of my top 3 moments live.
I was just gonna say that. After you mentioned
grooving
that,
out to that part.
after you mentioned that second chorus, that I know I've said it many times that live, you know, this and that song is my favorite, but probably, in all honesty, my favorite moment is that second chorus, because I feel everyone's playing, and usually I come in with that second chorus, and I'm loving life for about the first like 2 measures, and then I'm like,
Other than that, I totally despise it.
no, seriously though. I'm loving life for the first 2 measures, and as I'm loving life, I'm like, what is everyone else doing right now? I look up and everyone else is like loving their own lives, and then I look at the stage in general, and life is just loved.
Wow.
Like, I'm serious. I will say this. That is my favorite moment.
trust the words that you say. Keeping my distance so I don't have to feel like I was pushing you. Open your eyes and watch the red leaves fall from every dream that made up every thought of you and I here together. You and I. So when did this emptiness begin? 'Cause my heart was always in its way to feel the cold air, brush my eyes and notice the sky was pouring the color of your skin. Two hands are floating, they were one and the same. We tried our best to keep that look off your face, but we just couldn't take it
To be honest, it's a pretty mediocre song until you get the meaning.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
I disagree, but I agree also.
Well, tell them the meaning. Tell the people what they should
Okay,
hear.
well, it's been written about previously on blogs, but
MySpace.com/Ely Falls.
yeah, what he said.
You're probably already there if you're watching this video.
That's probably true.
I remember I heard the story before I actually heard the song, and so that kind of, I think it changed a lot about how I viewed the song, and so I think everyone should know the story, yada yada. But
It was probably legitimately like one of the 3 coldest days of last winter, without question. Because Bo and I spent like 10 minutes talking on the phone about like, and we were just going back and forth about like, oh god, it's so cold, and I don't even know if I can walk, and my hand about froze off, and we were just like being complete prima donnas about the weather.
Yeah, derp, chirp, chirp.
And
It's easy to like a song when someone else writes it because when they send it to you, you listen to it as if it's some other distant band's music. So I experienced that when Dustin sent it to me because it's just like, hey man, this is the story, this is what happened to me. And then he played it for me and I was just like, man, I like that. And then of course we got to record the percussion in Ben's room and that was fun, just being all crammed in there. And
so as I was walking by, I just happened to look down in between these 2 buildings. There's like this little alley thing, like not a full alley, but it's like a walk behind. And there were these 2 people like wedged up in there. I didn't even know there were people at first, and I just kind of thought, and I was like, wow, I've been bitching about this weather when I'm going home to like this warm apartment. And they were just sitting out there freezing, and so I was like, okay. And this is like the first time I'd ever done anything like this, but went to this place called The Den, which sells like University of Iowa Hawkeye merchandise and stuff. And they had like fleece blankets in there, so I bought this blanket, and I went across the Poncheros across the street and bought like 4 tacos, and I wrapped it up in this blanket. And I went over there and I just like laid it in front of him and didn't say anything. They just said stay warm, and took off. And about I don't know, a block away, he's like, wait, and this guy came up and just gave me this big hug, and he was like, we'll never forget you. And I don't know if they've forgotten me, but I guess that's not the point.
Patience takes more than you, 'cause all our words are meaningless without action. And all we need is just a little more to prove that not every person's fully gone. You rise and I fall. It's the way we stand that makes us feel so small. We know that all hope is not lost, just hidden somewhere that not everyone can trust. If you looked a little harder, if you stayed a little longer, then we could see the tide that came to sweep away every soul. Patience wants more than you, 'cause we all have the same red blood that courses through our veins. And all they ask is for a little more, to keep their eyes from shutting to the world. You rise and I fall. It's the way we stand that makes us feel so small. We know that all hope is not lost, just hidden somewhere that not everyone can trust. If you looked a little harder, if you stayed a little longer, then we could see the tide that came to sweep away every soul. We know that all hope is not lost, just hidden somewhere that not everyone can trust. If you looked a little harder, if you stayed a little longer, we could see the tide that came to sweep away every.
It's a song that I wouldn't take anything back about.
part of why Analem is my favorite is because it's the most fun for me to play live. It's just, there's so much feeling to it, and I feel like the most cohesive as a band, like especially because there's a whole community aspect at the end with the gang vocals and the story and things like that.
The first time we ever played it, usually when we're on stage and you have to play notes with your hands, you're kind of on demand, but the first time we played Analemma and I got to do the fingerpick part and Jen was doing her flute solo, that was the first time in the history of Fraud, any band I've been in.
History of Bo.
In the history of me being on stage, that was the first time I was ever calm or my attention was dispersed enough to actually be able to like look up and around and sort of hear what was going on as if I was in the audience. And I was so calm. So that's probably, I love playing that song live for that reason. It's just that like, it's cool, but at the same time, it's the most calming thing for me because all the parts are simple and you can actually be sort of within the song while you're playing it instead of just preparing it, playing it, and sending it out for scrutiny. You can enjoy it a little yourself.
That's another one of my top 3 moments live. Especially after we got like the vocals of the round constructed and put in place. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where it's fun to step away from the mics for a while and like Bo plays soft enough that we can just kind of put ourselves on the same level as the audience for a while or something.
And I just feel the most connected with the band when we play that live, and so that's probably a lot of why I like it so much. I just can't not dance when I listen to the chorus.
We had those people over, they had no idea what we were about. And we're like, okay, here's the song. And then they're like, oh, you actually have a song that makes sense and is halfway decent. Like,
Can I say something funny?
Yeah.
When I ran into Trey the other day, he was talking about Leanne and she was reminiscing about singing. She's like, I don't even know which song I sang on. And he's like, it has to be the last one. Like, that's really all he said, but
she didn't know.
But she knew so little about us that she didn't even really know what song she had sang on.
And at that time, we didn't even, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't even think that we fully had the middle part of that song fleshed out
No.
yet.
Definitely not.
It was very open.
It was
the middle
like,
part was the last thing we did.
right. It was like we have this beginning that we know we want, and we have this end that we know we're going to end with. Where do we fill in the stuff in the middle?
Yeah.
So like these things we had people singing over were these fragments, and then we're like, 6 months later, we like, hey, you can download the album now, and just like you were saying, like people didn't know what the hell, like where they were on the CD. Like, I don't know. I didn't even have a clear idea of where things were sometimes. So.
Ely Falls to me is both really, really childish, but at the same time I can still be expressive, and I hope it serves us well because I like making it. But
Maybe on record the ending sounds a little bit long, but I think live it's hard to, at least it's hard for me to not get into the feeling of it, or at least feel something. And it's almost different every time we play it, but more recently it's been fun to just like scream some of the stuff at the top of your lungs.
Yeah, that's my favorite part, just belt out.
Yeah.
tried to rip you apart. And so our minds went to funnel form, then fell away in the great storm. And all the sails we held were storm. But sometimes you'll find maybe the world was wrong. I found your heart in every place but the setting sun. Don't close your eyes, my love, for there's a million ways to see the stars. The waves are crashing over every beat and shoulder. Rain picks up a little more each day. And in the valley where the river used to bend, there's an overflow that can't be won. The northern lights are fading into a wind unfailing. Maybe the world was wrong. I found your heart in every place but the setting sun. Don't close your eyes, my love, for there's a million ways to see the stars. Maybe the world was wrong. I found your heart in every place but the setting sun. Don't close your eyes, my love, for there's a million ways to see the stars. Maybe the world was wrong. I found your heart in every place but the setting sun. Don't close your eyes, my love, for there's a million ways
instead of just playing by like instinct, it was fun to see you like mechanically work things out. And I think because of it, like, you're probably a 2 times better drummer now than you were like a year ago, I would say. Just because we like
2.5.
for those some of those things were like pushed you maybe beyond your comfort zone and made you do stuff you probably didn't want to do. But towards the end of it, it got really easy when it'd be like, we just want this, and then you'd be like, oh, something like this, and then you'd like nail it. Or, like, okay,
That sense of progress kind of drives me nuts sometimes when there are just like things on an album that you struggled to lay down. When I say you, I mostly mean me. Like struggled to lay them down, and like, and they work, but you're like, man, I remember trying so hard, and now it just comes out of you, and you're just like, I wish it was really efficient to have 2 years to play something live before laying it down.
I like Analemma because, to be honest, it started to be really, really forced. Like, we had 2 days left to record, and I was like, oh man, gotta crank out one more song at least. I mean, half-hour album, that's just not gonna cut it. So I just started jamming, and but when Austin came in and laid down his drums, and when I was listening to it and I heard it for the first time, I was so pumped because it was like every feel that he went into was right, and I hadn't really felt that before. So just the way that it's like a slight build up, then really calm.
If I wasn't making music with them, they'd be people I would be hanging out with anyways. But I think it's just fun to see your friends be creative and make, like, have something tangible that, you know, they can hold in their hands at the end of the day. And I think it's rewarding for everybody in that sense, that I get to, you know, sing over these guys' music, or that they get to write a guitar part over Austin's drums, or she gets to play flute over Austin's drums and Bo's guitar. So I think it's fun. I don't know, if it wasn't for just being able to have that sort of connection with like friends and stuff, this wouldn't even be fun. And I don't think I would ever want to write a record again where we had this like overarching story that we kind of like had to adhere to, where I think this one we kind of went in like reverse order, where this is our story, we're gonna write songs to match it, kind of after we had some of the like milestone songs. And I think the way to do it would be to write songs, or like if we were to write an entire album of instrumental stuff and then Bo and I sat down or something, we're like, okay, here's the story that comes out of this music, and this is what we have to apply to it. I think we did that in a reverse way. Not to say that it's bad, but it was a lot, we made it a lot more difficult than it had to be on ourselves.
Really might have been inefficient.
Right.
Ben and I were just talking about that the other day. Just how like we still haven't really found what works.
The combination of us all coming from different backgrounds but having the same common ground in some way makes us the band we are. Dustin brings us some ice, Bo brings us some fire.
I object.
Frankie definitely brings some desert.
Austin
I
is
feel like Jen is a very
Tropical rainforest.
almost
Oh.
yeah, almost foresty, but not so much in the fall, but getting close to fall.
She's just a heartbeat.
It looks really nice, but yet it's not too nice that it can't fit in with Bo's fire.
Well, I think it's
And I honestly feel like I am the lukewarm water that sits in the middle of everything.
It's not just a self-pride, but it's a pride in our friends. And I don't know. It's really collective and makes me feel really a lot closer to everyone and stuff like that.
My favorite aspect of writing music and having your own studio is that you don't give yourself time to get bored. It's still magical to you, and that might be easier to write from your heart and just like let it come out, because you know when that feeling comes, it's pretty fleeting. So having equipment there and letting it all out is pretty awesome. I think that's one of my favorite ways to write.
I don't know, I don't think any of us are particularly weak at what we do, but maybe because we're a young band, we have like the problem of completely identifying ourselves and molding ourselves as a cohesive unit. Maybe, what do you think?
I think there's two kinds of people. I think there's that would approach or comment on a song, and I think One of them is what you're describing, people who are either maybe actually in the music business or making music themselves, who, yeah, will realize why you put out the album that you did and that maybe you could have done better if you had taken another year, but they appreciate what you put out and where you're going. They see where you're going, not what you put out. They see where you're going. And then there's another group of people who maybe don't know as much about music in general and just enjoy listening to it and honestly think, wow, this is really good. And that's not a bad thing, that's just their opinion. And so when they comment on it, they are honestly saying, this is great, I really like listening to this. I don't see where you're going with it, but I don't care because I like this. They don't care to see where you're going. I'm not saying that they're like, well, don't see where they're going, but I like it. They don't even look that far ahead. They're looking at what's in front of them.
I've been in a couple bands, and every time had something lacking. Like Fraught was total feeling. I loved being in it. Every event we took place in was like one of the funnest times I'll ever have. But for some reason, it's probably totally personal too, I just never made the leap of artistically throwing myself into it, so I could never really endorse it, which, like I said, just completely personal. There's nothing about Fraught that sucks. I love Fraught, but for some reason I dichotomized my fun and what I really wanted to express, and so for a long time with Ben I was in Okayama, and then but like on the opposite end of the spectrum, I kept being really, really contrived about how I would make music for it, and it would just be for the sole purpose of like trying to impress people with like my musical background and stuff. But then, just like when I started getting the sense that that wasn't working, Ely Falls came to light, and it was best of both worlds because, like, Austin is a large part the spirit of Fraught, because Fraught began when him and I were just jamming around in high school to Creed songs, and so like it was like the oldest, most childish sentiment in me, but at the same time it was like the aftermath of Okayama. So Ely Falls to me is both really, really childish, but at the same time I can still be expressive, and I hope it serves us well, because I like making it, but that's what it means to me.